I'm Rhench, and this is the story of my attempt at a Pokemon SoulSilver hardcore Nuzlocke. I've had a little experience in this kind of thing at this point. I successfully completed a similar run in Pokemon Fire Red not too terribly long ago, and that went really well. I mean, if you don't count this little setback.
The epic confrontation here. Should be okay even on a crit. Oh no! I've already lost.
But that was the only time I wiped in the whole run, so I felt pretty good about my chances going into this new game. A few bits of information to set the scene for you. What I'm attempting is a Nuzlocke run, which if you're unfamiliar is a challenge run that limits your options and generally makes the game a lot harder. The basics of a Nuzlocke run usually involve a few things. First, you're only allowed to capture the first Pokemon you encounter in any location. Every route, city, cave, and anything else that has a distinct location identifier can give you only one Pokemon, and only the first one that you see. If you knock out the encounter, or if it runs away from you, or if you run away from it, but why would you ever do that, you get nothing from that location. The second standard rule is that if a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead, and there's no reviving it. In my early runs, I would release them when that happened, but it ends up more convenient to have a storage box for them so you can both be sure what routes you've had your encounters on and reminisce on your past failures. Those are the core components, but I decided to add quite a few more handicaps to myself. I'd try to explain why, but the only real explanation is that it made things more fun. Or, I'm a masochist, but let's go with the more fun one. The first extra limit that I placed on myself is no item use during battle. Obviously, revives are already off the table, but other items can really change the strategy of the game. Put in something that's either tanky enough to soak a few hits, or that you don't mind putting in the graveyard, heal up your other, more valuable Pokemon on your turn, and voila! Most of the difficulty of the game is completely eliminated. Not to mention the incredible power of X items. For the pedantic among you, and I won't name names, but I know who you are, obviously, I'm allowed to use Pokeballs, and variants thereof, for my actual encounters. I just can't throw them during a trainer battle to stall for time, or something like that. There's a few more rules, some of them are pretty important, but rather than front load you with all of them, I'll mention the others when they become more relevant. For now, let's get started with my first ever run through Pokemon SoulSilver. I'd never played this game before, so I don't know what Pokemon the gym leaders have, or how many of them they have, or where the surprise battles are in the game, or anything like that. So, we'll see how this goes. To get started, I go through the opening nonsense and get my first Pokemon. I chose Cyndaquil, a fire type, and named it Minasanuki. I'm going to be naming all of my Pokemon after friends of mine, to increase emotional attachment to them and to give me something to apologize for when I inevitably get them killed. I picked Cyndaquil because fire types tend to be hard to find in the wild, while grass and water types tend to be pretty abundant. Also, Cyndaquil is adorable as fuck. I mean, look at it. Together, Mina and I ran out to do an errand for the professor, and on my way back I ran into my newly acquired rival, who had somehow stolen the Totodile from the lab after I left. After giving a police report, my childhood friend, who I assume will also be my rival at some point, taught me how to catch Pokemon and gave me my first few Pokeballs. I promptly caught a Pidgey, complained about first generation Pokemon being in this game at all for the first and definitely not the last time, and started out on my adventure. Along the way to the first gym, a Weedle, a Bellsprout, and a Geodude all found their way onto my team. I picked up a Rattata in the Bellsprout Tower because I didn't understand the day-night cycle or listen to the many NPCs who were trying to hint at it, and managed to beat the first mini-boss of the game at the top of the tower just after my rival did. With a full team of Generation 1 Pokemon in my starter, and brimming with confidence, I swaggered up to the first gym. It would turn out that my team was a bit lower level than Faulkner's best, but that wasn't going to stop me. I decided to lead with Durf, my Geodude, since his rock attacks would be strong, and he's tanky enough to absorb some hits. Since I'm playing on set mode, he may well need to take some damage. In case you don't know, there are two ways to play Pokemon. The default, Switch mode, lets you swap out your Pokemon every time you defeat one of an enemy trainer's Pokemon. Set mode does not allow this. You have to spend your turn swapping out if you want to do so, potentially taking a hit or letting your enemy set up on that turn. It's an important difference in how you play out fights and how you build teams. On Switch mode, it's usually best to get as many strong and fast attackers as you can, because they never take damage if you always go first and always kill in one shot. But on set mode, you have to figure out how to get your heavy hitters into the battle safely, or you get bulldozed before they can even get an attack in. Glass cannons are still powerful, but there's a real drawback to using them. Fortunately for me, Durf was tanky enough to absorb several hits from the higher level Pidgeotto, and Rock Throw landed a critical hit at the end to keep me from losing any of my new friends. A bit closer than it probably should have been, but no losses. Working my way to the next town, I apparently have to stop Team Rocket from cutting off Slowpoke tails and selling them in order to progress the main story, or whatever passes for it in this game. So, I climb down a well, beat up some goons, beat up their boss, who's an entirely forgettable mook, and get excited by the chance to catch my own Slowpoke. Until I accidentally click run in the middle of the battle.
Or if you run away from it, but why would you ever do that? Why would you ever do that? Why would you ever do that? You get nothing from that location.
So I miss out on adding a new friend to my team entirely. But at least the egg I got from the professor's aide hatches into a Togepi. Back in town, the gym is open, so I put together a team and realize there's a little bit of a gap between Bugsy's best Pokemon and my team. But Rhench, I can hear the attentive and/or pedantic among you ask, I thought this was a blind run. How do you know what level his best Pokemon is? Because of arguably the most difficult rule of my challenge, level caps. My Pokemon are not allowed to be used if they are higher level than the next gym leader's ace. Whatever their highest level Pokemon is, mine cannot be greater than that until I challenge that gym leader, or if I get far enough, Elite Four member. Once the battle starts, I can keep using my Pokemon even if they level up during the battle, but until the moment the fight starts, I can't use overleveled Pokemon for any fight. They can wait in my PC, so I can use them later once the level cap goes up, but until then, they're off limits. A friend of mine familiar with the game gave me the level caps in advance, so I would know how strong I could make my Pokemon, but I wouldn't know how many Pokemon they have or what they are, just the levels. This limitation will have serious implications on how I handle the Elite Four, but let's not get too far ahead of myself, I'm still at the second gym. I figure bugs are susceptible to fire, and my starter is a fire type, and bugs are overall kind of weak, so I should be okay even if I am a bit underleveled. It turns out that Bugsy leads with his ace, which I was not expecting, and that his ace is a Scyther, which is an incredibly dangerous Pokemon if you're not adequately prepared. In fact, not adequately prepared might be a good alternate title for this video, and it certainly applies to this fight. After boosting its critical hit chance and making use of its Technician ability that raises the power of low-power attack moves, Scyther kills my Geodude and my Pidgey. I had evolved Mina into Quilava just before the fight, and she managed to finish off the Scyther along with the crummy cocoon bugs that Bugsy must have found in a ditch out back, but this is still a pretty big loss for my team. Geodude was the only real tank that I had, and Pidgey was my only flying option at the moment. So I went to my PC and grabbed a bunch of low-level Pokemon to try to train up, and headed west. Or I started to head west when I was ambushed by my rival for an impromptu battle. This fight was not good for me. Despite my rival having only 3 Pokemon, he had a huge level advantage since I was still replenishing after my rough fight with Bugsy, and I had things like this Magikarp that only knows Splash, a move that does nothing. Anyway, my Zubat was able to eliminate his Ghastly before Curse drained it too much, but his Croconaw is something I basically have no answer to. First my Ekans, then my Magikarp, then my Togepi, then my Zubat, all fell before the water starter. With an injured Bellsprout and a Quilava that's weak to water moves, it looks like my first run at SoulSilver is going down in flames, well, bubbles, before I can even find the third gym. Oh, another rule that I didn't think would be relevant to talk about this early is that if I ever black out from having all my Pokemon faint, the run is over and I have to restart from the beginning, even if I had more Pokemon in the PC. So, with my starter standing in front of him and his counter-picked Croconaw poised to end my run, what does my rival do? He orders it to make a Scary Face 3 times in a row. Scary Face does nothing but lower the speed of the enemy Pokemon, and I've been ordering Mina to use Quick Attack, which is a priority move. That means it will always go first regardless of Mina's speed. So, with my opponent effectively wasting 3 turns, Mina took down the Croc, and only a Zubat stood in the way of me continuing on. I swapped in my Bellsprout to clean off the speed debuffs on Mina, and Bellsprout paid the ultimate price for it. Down to 1 Pokemon, Mina the Quilava got confused, hit herself, and with exactly 1 hit point remaining, fought through the confusion to land the final blow. I have to head back to the local cemetery to dig 5 more graves on top of the 2 that I had just finished, and worse still, I have less than a full team of 6 Pokemon left after this massacre. To make matters even more problematic, Mina is already dangerously close to the next level cap since she's been pulling all of the weight so far, so I have to closely manage how much experience she gets between here and the next gym. I make my way through the Ilex Forest and pick up what could be a valuable addition to the team in a Drowsy that I nearly immediately lose. While doing some grinding, Rattata used Pursuit, a weak dark move that doubles in power and hits if the target switches out. Drowsy is not only affected by it, but it hits him super effectively, and Drowsy dies immediately. After running away from the Slowpoke encounter and now losing Drowsy, it looks like I'm not going to have a potentially defensively strong Psychic on my team early, and Drowsy was one of the Pokemon that won the Elite Four in Fire Red, so I'm really sad about this loss. Well, I'm right on the outskirts of Goldenrod City, so I head in. Goldenrod is the big sprawling metropolis in this game, complete with bike shop and department store. There's also a bunch of buildings that will contribute to story elements later. I get the gym leader out of the radio station, and I'm surprised to discover that Whitney only has 2 Pokemon. Her Miltank stomps on just about everything I have, handing out flinches like candy on Halloween, and making it hard for me to return much damage. Eventually, it locks in Rollout, a move that lasts several turns, ramping in power each time it hits. I get a lucky burn, reducing its damage enough that a last rollout doesn't kill my Nidorina, and it dies to the burn at the end of the turn. I head north to the next city, and Team Rocket again pretends to be in this game by having one member mess with some kimono girls. I beat up the Rocket and get the Surf HM, and learn that none of my Pokemon can actually learn Surf, but since the next thing I need to do is explore an old burned out house, it shouldn't matter immediately. In the old house, I find 3 legendary Pokedogs, my rival, this town's gym leader, some guy who's following the legendary Pokedogs around, some fire breathers practicing their craft who definitely didn't burn down the house, and honestly, there's a lot of people in this really unsafe structure. Anyway, I beat up my rival, the legends run away, the gym leader goes back where he belongs, and I can move on. For the first, but definitely not the last time, I fuck around for a while in the Pokeathlon Dome. There's a bunch of fun minigames here, and if you win enough of them, you can get some prizes. I probably won't dwell on this too much, but it's enough fun that I tended to either warm up or cool down at the start and end of my days with a round of games in the Dome. Then I got to cosplay as Team Rocket and accessorize Mina and take some cute photos of her, which was a surprising amount of fun for a silly little mechanic. Honestly, the little minigames in this game are way better than the actual story of it, but I digress. Back on track, my team takes on Morty, the gym leader who seems to think that he is the protagonist of this game. He does manage to take out my Koffing and my Pineco, but I have a trump card, a normal type Pokemon that cannot be damaged by ghost moves, and Morty's ace can only damage with ghost moves and a move that requires me to attack it for it to deal damage. So I spam Confuse Ray and Sand Attack, and Morty's Gengar struggles to do anything relevant. At least he has 4 Pokemon, so that's a step in the right direction. Next, I do some meaningless puzzles and get a meaningless Pokemon in the ruins of Alph. I head to the next city and fight my way up a lighthouse to find the gym leader at the top with a sick Ampharos, and she won't battle me until the Ampharos is feeling better. Look, I can kind of get this one at least. She's trying to fix the lighthouse and the Pokemon that it relies on. She's an important person in town, so she has to be reliable, sure. But this is the 3rd gym leader in a row that is absent from their gym. Use a different mechanic to get me to do something before the gym, please. Have literally anything that matters in between the towns. There was actually a lot of space between Ecruteak and here. There could have been like a Nugget Bridge style gauntlet or literally anything else. It doesn't really matter, but I'm annoyed by it, okay? So now I have to surf to some island where there's another gym entirely in order to get medicine for the Lighthouse Ampharos. There's a bunch of encounters out here, including the Safari Zone, where I pick up a Quagsire. Quagsire's a decent encounter, but like just about everything on my team, or that I've gotten, and it's dead, it's not as good as some of the other stuff that I could have gotten, but that's how a Nuzlocke goes. There's also Geodudes kind of all over the place, in caves and on rocky paths and in the Safari Zone itself, and one of those uses Magnitude 10, which kills my Magnemite, and another one self-destructs on my Fearow. I'm starting to hate Geodudes. Things continue on a steady decline as I lose my now Nidoqueen to a Hitmonlee in the fighting gym on the island where I got the medicine. Some of these deaths have been unlucky, though probably preventable, but this one has no excuse. I just played badly. I'm at 13 deaths so far, and I'm really limiting my options by losing all these Pokemon. Eventually, I'm not going to be able to cover for all these mistakes. Chuck himself, the gym leader for the fighting gym, has only 2 Pokemon, and I redeem myself a little by showing off an effective strategy. My Espeon gets paralyzed by one of Chuck's moves, but it holds a berry that cures the paralysis, and it also has the Synchronize ability, which inflicts the paralysis on the foe as well. Chuck goes down without issue, and I get my 5th badge. I head up to the Lake of Rage, where apparently things are going crazy, beat up a red Gyarados, meet Lance the Dragon Man in what I do not realize is a portentous meeting, and most importantly catch a Mareep. Mareep is an adorable little electro sheep that everyone in my chat is super excited about, to the point of rooting for Wild Mareep to beat my Pokemon at times. It's also a really good counter to my rivals for Alligator. So, needless to say, my electric sheep dies about an hour later to another pursuit Rattata. Everyone was very sad. Lance the Dragon Man does something I don't think I've ever seen before. He directly has his Pokemon attack a defenseless human. Not just that, but it's his signature Dragonite, which uses one of the most powerful attacks in the game, Hyper Beam. The dude is flattened into a wall, and Lance just acts like this is an everyday occurrence for him. Seriously, my guy, this is more villainous than any of the stuff Team Rocket has done in this game. You are probably the most dangerous person in Johto. I'm just glad you seem to like me and that I don't have to fight you. Anyway, with an attempted murder hanging in the air, Lance strong-arms this guy into opening the way to Team Rocket's base, and I go down and clear them out. I also completely fail to realize that the explosion trap thing that the Rockets have set up counts as a battle with a wild Pokemon. I kill a Voltorb, and a while later realize that that was my encounter for this area. I really could have used a fast electric type, especially since my Mareep died, but I doubt it'll really matter much. I defeat some pretty forgettable Team Rocket goons, some guy who's bad at impressions, and the first female executive I've seen in Team Rocket, so at least that's nice. I have a double battle with Lance against her, and a random Mook, which is kinda weird because the guy who was running the operation in the Slowpoke well was definitely a named character, and he wasn't anywhere else in this base, but whatever, he was pretty forgettable, so I can understand not reusing him. Beating the Rockets, I'm allowed into the Ice Gym. The game is in its foray into a very loose, open-world concept where I could do the fighting, steel, and ice gyms in any order I choose depending on what story elements I finish first. Honestly, this is more annoying than anything because it means they can't have a natural difficulty progression from one gym to the next. Well. Price's Dugong stalls a bit, but my own Dugong Elias was never in any real danger. I get another badge and head back to Jasmine at the Steel Gym, where I am frankly insulted. She and Price both have 3 Pokemon, and I know I just talked about how they can't ramp the difficulty because you could choose your order, but the 4th gym had 4 Pokemon. Whatever order you took the next 3 in, they all had less. 2, 3, and 3. Even worse, Price had both a Dugong and a Seal instead of introducing any other new ice Pokemon, and Jasmine had 2 Magnemites, not even a Magneton, let alone more new Pokemon. At least Steelix and Pillowswine both got to be involved, but why not throw in a Skarmory, a Scizor, a Sneasel, a Delibird? Okay, I know why not a Delibird, but still. Also, Jasmine's gym doesn't even have underlings. And don't tell me that the lighthouse counts, because no one in the lighthouse had steel Pokemon, including the person who claimed to be from her gym, so what the hell? I just walk in, my Quilava one-hit KOs all 3 things, and I've got 7 badges. What a waste of this steel type, which is honestly a cool new type, and this is kind of a letdown. But I guess easy success isn't something I should really complain about. Getting back to the story, and I use the term loosely, I have to go back to Goldenrod to deal with more radio signals. Did I mention that Team Rocket was behind the Lake of Rage going crazy with a radio signal? I probably didn't. They were. It was boring. Anyway, an actually fun part of the story is that I get to join Team Rocket for a little while. Sadly, my evil days are immediately put to an end by my useless rivals stripping off my Team Rocket outfit in a public building, which apparently gets me kicked out of Team Rocket. If I'm honest, Rockets have been publicly embarrassed way worse than this and have gotten to stick around. So I'm pissed at the double standards here. Furious with upper management, I smash my way up the radio tower to find Petrel, the awful imposter from earlier. He throws 5 coughings and a wheezing at me, which is honestly the most respectable thing a Rocket has done this game. At least this guy is committed to the bit. They go down without much issue though, and I learn the location of the real president in a basement across town. So I head down there and get jumped by my rival for an actual battle this time instead of just generally annoying me and taking away my favorite part of the plot so far. My rival has a neat ice Pokemon that would have been much cooler in the ice gym I just visited, especially since the rival doesn't have any battling ability whatsoever. I mean, this run would be over and I wouldn't have a Typhlosion at all if he did. I stomp my rival, I get the key to the remainder of the radio tower, and on my way up, fight the blue-haired Rocket who was, I think, the guy in the well. He has 2 Pokemon and no personality to speak of, but he does have a fangirl among his underlings, so that's something, I guess. Then I fight the first lady of Team Rocket, Ariana, and she's at least a bit of a firebrand, but her Pokemon still aren't very strong at this point. Then, at the top, the interim boss Rocket, I seriously couldn't tell you this guy's name if you paid me, challenges me. My slightly reckless predictions almost get my Dugong killed, but otherwise nothing memorable happens. Seriously, I beat this guy once and he gives up entirely, disbanding the rest of Team Rocket along with his evil plan. Spoiler, with the exception of one comic relief character much later on, Team Rocket is completely done with this story. They don't return to seek revenge or interrupt my goals, there's no Giovanni that shows up to save them or scold them, there's no one else that tries to rebuild, reforge, or accomplish anything whatsoever. They just leave. Moving on then. I go through an ice cave and end up in the Dragon Town. Is it me, or is building a town dedicated to dragons right next to the element that hurts them the most just a little bit brutal when you think about it? Like, the game reason is to give you something that can counter the dragons with ice attacks, but from a story perspective, it's kind of monstrous. And you find out later that Lance is basically the inspiration for this gym's leader as well, which continues the theme of Lance being more evil than the purported bad guys in this game, but I digress yet again. Game Freak obviously didn't spend much time thinking about the story for this game, so I'm going to try to stop as well. As I train up for the dragon battle, I encounter a wild Wobbuffet, an unusual Pokemon that prevents you from switching out or running, and whose moves tend to rely on you damaging it for it to strike back. Several stupid decisions later, my only option was to kill it while it was under the effects of Destiny Bond, which kills anything that kills the user. So I just had to knowingly use a move that I knew would kill my Dugong just before a gym where an ice type would be really useful. So I replaced Dugong with Piloswine, which has an ability that makes it hard to hit in the hail, and I teach it Blizzard, an incredibly powerful move that can't miss in the hail. I also teach it how to make it hail. My plan is to set up Juice the Piloswine to sweep the entire Dragon Leader's team. Then, Claire ruins all my careful planning by leading with a Gyarados, which is not only not a dragon, but it isn't countered by ice thanks to water's resistance canceling out flying's weakness. Claire continues to mock me after I beat the Gyarados by sending out Dragonair, my favorite Pokemon, and one that I've had some really bad luck with in my Fire Red run. I finish Dragonair off, but her ace, an incredibly dangerous Kingdra, whittles down my entire team. I have to sacrifice Stantler to get enough to kill the Kingdra, and her Dragonair eventually takes out my Tentacruel as well. Finally, a decent challenge from a gym leader. It's been more or less since Morty that I felt any pressure from a leader. Losing Tentacruel is a little sad, but its Dragon-typed hidden power move that I thought would be my secret weapon did approximately -0 damage, and I do have a lot of water and poison options still at my disposal, relatively speaking. We had long passed the point in the game where a non-intimidate Stantler was relevant anyway, so neither of these losses are too debilitating. Before I get my badge for beating Claire, I apparently have to prove myself in the Dragon's Den. Frankly, it seems like Claire is just a sore loser. Even Whitney gave me my badge after being given a moment to cool off, and she's basically a child. A bunch of questions and a disapproving comment about what Lance Senpai would think later, and Claire gives in and hands it over. More importantly to me, I pick up my own Dratini in the cave. While it would be able to evolve into Dragonair, it couldn't fully evolve to Dragonite at the level I enter the Elite Four, and the move that I would really want it to have, Dragon Dance, is even later. So I decide to hold on to it for the post-Elite Four part of the game, assuming that I get there. Speaking of the Elite Four, now that I have all 8 badges, I should be able to just go find them, go through a few battles, and... What now, childhood friend who hasn't really done anything for many hours in the story? I have to go visit the Kimono girls who have been vaguely stalking me all game? Ugh, fine, whatever. They battle in gauntlet style, each with 1 evolution. My Quagsire is on red health at the start of the second battle. I can't change the order between fights, and Quag is probably the slowest Pokemon that I have, so I'm always giving them a free hit in these fights. Fortunately, I survive with no losses. Unfortunately, this means that they think I'm the Chosen One, or some nonsense, and they want me to bring back a legendary Pokemon named Lugia for some reason. I never figured out what was going on with what I will generously call the plot of this part of the game. After confirming that the lead kimono girl is in fact a liar and that I am not allowed to do whatever I please by leaving, I complain a bit about this pointless railroad plot from keeping me from the Elite Four, walk up to Lugia, have my Pokemon run away from it, and declare the task completed, despite nothing having changed and the story being exactly the same as it was when I showed up. I mean, seriously, the egg that they were so happy I hatched grew into a Pokemon that died like 10 minutes later in that awful rival ambush. How did they decide I was the chosen one who would bring back a legend only spoken of in hushed tones? And when I did it, why were they completely satisfied with me just walking up to it, turning around, and walking back? Real talk, even for a kid's game, this is some of the weakest storytelling I've ever seen. With all of that finally behind me, I head into Victory Road, the final path before the Elite Four. I set up my team to best prepare for another ambush from my rival, and to ensure that nothing I plan to bring to the Elite Four gets too many levels. Some wandering around later, my rival does indeed show up. His first 4 Pokemon go down without much issue, and then he brings out Feraligatr. This thing already has a taste for my Pokemon's blood, and it probably wants to finish what it started on Mina so long ago. I leave her out as bait and swap in my Poliwrath, who heals whenever it's attacked with a water move. It happily takes the incoming waterfall, then puts the Gator to sleep. The nap lasts long enough to take it down, and I am through the final impediment to my ultimate goal, the Elite Four. Now, it's time to really strategize. I know from some of the other media that I've seen that Koga, the poison gym leader from the first game, got promoted to Elite Four member. That gives me confidence in bringing my Espeon, a psychic type, to the party. It covers poison and fighting, and since I've used a TM to put Shadow Ball on, Ghost as well. I'm guessing that since there was a Steel Gym and no Dark Gym, that they will want to give the other new type in this game a showcase in the Elite Four. For Dark, I have a Machoke. For the rest of the team, I'm very unsure. I grind and think for several streams and for more hours, and during this process my unknown, Griff III, finds a way to live up to its unfortunate heritage and die. What was I doing with a level 5 practically useless Pokemon on my team at this point? I completely forget. Anyway, I play Voltorb Flip for an eternity to get me some TMs, and I stock up on items to restore health and cure status conditions between battles. Then I finally settle on a team. First, I've got Tiny the Poliwhirl. Water is a really strong type, and the added fighting type gives me solid ways to handle any steel or dark types that I run into. With Hypnosis in the arsenal to put foes to sleep and the water absorb ability to heal on water moves, Tiny could be a sustainable powerhouse if I play well. Next up, Whiskey the Lantern. Whiskey is also a water type on top of electric, but its ability Volt Absorb makes it heal from any electric moves that target it. In addition to the magnet it carries up its own electric damage, I gave him a Bug move, Signal Beam, to help out with Psychic and Dark types. Third up, Minasanuki, my Typhlosion who has been with me since the beginning, and who barely survived all alone with 1 HP back at the rival ambush in Azalea Town. Mina's been holding Charcoal to boost her damage on Flamethrower, which already benefits from being the same type as her, Fire. Even more, her ability Blaze amps Flamethrower even more if she's low on health. I fill her out with a variety of moves for type coverage, but I'm using both physical and special damage moves, which is not ideal. I mentioned Domo the Espeon before, and he is still coming with. Psychic was made a bit weaker with the introduction of Steel and Dark, as well as Ghosts that aren't Poison type, but I still think they can be pretty strong. Domo carries Choice Specs, which dramatically increase damage on special attacks, but force Domo to only use the first move I click when he enters the field. If I ever want to change moves, I have to spend time swapping in and out. It's risky, considering the dangers of giving my opponents free turns to set up or just straight up deal damage, especially since Espeon is a very fragile Pokemon compared to some of the other evolutions. If I can use one move over and over though, it's a powerful weapon to put this fairly speedy glass cannon on. Fifth on the team is yet another water type, this time combined with ground, Diaz the Quagsire. It has immunity to electricity and water, good bulkiness, a decent attack stat, and a solid support move in Yawn. Holding Soft Sand boosts an already powerful move in Earthquake even further beyond, and Diaz's only real weakness is Grass. In fact, since we know Machoke is the final member, a lot of my team will struggle with Grass. Only Lantern and Typhlosion can hit Grass super effectively, 2 of my Pokemon take double damage from it, and Quagsire takes quadruple damage from it. My thinking here is that Grass types are predominantly supportive, and that my best options for dealing with them died earlier in the run, so there's really no way to fix this. Shanti the Machoke will be holding a Quick Claw to once in a while overcome her terrible speed, and she also has the No Guard ability, giving both her and her opponent perfect accuracy no matter what move they choose. This makes Shanti another risky choice, but a potential sweeper. Given the right setup, she could sweep a whole E4 member. But with the wrong one, she could die in a single hit. Machoke isn't even a final evolution, since Machamp is a trade-only evolution, I can't get her there, so I'm working with what I've got. Fighting is, as mentioned before, good for Steel and Dark types, as well as for normal if someone happens to have a Snorlax or something, and Machoke is the best of what I have. Head held high and full of determination, I walk past the attendant into the first Elite Four members' chamber. The time has come. Purple theming with strange cubes floating in the air catch my eye. Still fixated on my theory that the game would want to showcase its new type, I assume this guy with raccoon circles around his eyes must be the Dark type member, and set up my Machoke to go first. Will introduces himself and 4 sentences in reveals that he is the Psychic Specialist. That's awkward. Machoke is weak to psychic moves. Worse yet, Will leads with a Xatu, a psychic flying combination that is basically Machoke's worst nightmare, made feathery flesh. I've led with the worst possible Pokemon for the situation, but a quick swap to Lantern gives me a quick kill thanks to a critical hit on a Lightning Bolt. Jinx comes in and spreads some damage around a few of my team members as I swap around trying to find the right answer. Espeon is now asleep, and Will has used a full restore. Just because I can't use items in battle doesn't mean the Elite Four won't. Espeon eventually wakes up and puts down the Jinx with Shadow Ball. Will then sends in his second, much stronger, Xatu. Judging by its level, this is his ace. I opt for the same tactic as the first one and bring out Lantern, who gets hit by Ominous Wind. The move has a 10% chance at a secondary effect, which triggers, boosting every one of Xatu's stats. My task becomes significantly harder. To make matters worse, it then confuses my Lantern, who wastes a turn damaging itself. With boosted speed, Xatu is now faster than my whole team. With the offensive boost, it can take down everything in 2 hits or less, and even if I get an attack in, its defenses are amped as well. One by one, each of my Pokemon falls before this beastly Xatu. For the first time, I black out, and I must now start at the very beginning. Guessing the wrong type at the start certainly did me no favors, nor did the Ominous Wind Omni Boost, but to be honest, my team had some massive holes in it, due in no small part to the Pokemon that had died earlier in the run, and the ones that I straight out missed along the way. Failing at the first Elite Four hurdle sucks, but I have a little bit more information which I can use to help my next run be even more successful. And remember, even once I clear the Elite Four, I still have to go to Kanto, the region from the original games, get 8 more badges, fight an upgraded version of the Elite Four, and then challenge a final boss. With the whole game ahead of me once more, I grab another Cyndaquil, name it Sage, and run out the door. Now that I understand a bit more about the day-night cycle, I can get some more interesting and potentially more useful encounters, specifically Hoot Hoot, which just makes me happy to have a Pokemon from this generation in the first few hours of the game, and Ghastly, whose ghost typing is especially valuable against the plethora of early-game normal attackers. Unrelated to the day-night cycle, but still exciting, is the Mareep I pick up on Route 32, just before I challenge the first gym. On top of still being the people in my chat's favorite Pokemon, again, to the point that they were rooting for Mareeps to defeat me in my first run, Mareep is very strong against Falkner, and is a great answer to my rival's starting water Pokemon as well. After some quick leveling, Patience the Mareep hastily dispatches Falkner's birds, earning me my first badge for the second time. I don't accidentally run from Slowpoke this time, and nothing else of consequence really happens on the way to Bugsy. Bugsy's Scyther does once again claim a life though, snuffing out Patience, now evolved into Flaffy, with a U-turn. I really could have used something tankier going into this gym, but I intentionally avoided the encounter that would guarantee me a Geodude, because the Dark Cave is technically the same location as the cave that later has much higher level Pokemon, including Wobbuffet, where my Dugong died last time. Anyway, with the only counter to Croconaw dead, I move on to the rival ambush. At least I know it's coming this time. My new plan is to use Pidgey's Sand Attack to lower the Croc's accuracy, and things go according to plan, until Croconaw manages to not only land a hit, but a critical hit, killing Pidgey. The rest of the battle goes fine, and 1 loss is a pretty significant improvement from 5, so I'll take it. I mow through the next few areas without much incident, and decide to pick up a few more encounters before battling Whitney. One of those is in the National Park, which on certain days is holding a bug-catching contest. In my first run, I got a Paras, but this time I already have a Paras and a Weedle, so there's a chance I get something more interesting. After shooing away a Weedle, a Scyther pops out of the tall grass. After how effective Bugsy's Scyther has been at murdering my Pokemon, I'm super excited to get this thing on my team. So excited, in fact, that I'm willing to risk my Hoot Hoot's life when the Scyther refuses to stay in the weak Sport Balls that the contest forces you to use. The Scyther gives me a few chances, but it ends up killing my Hoot Hoot. And since the contest for some reason requires you to have only 1 Pokemon with you during it, I black out. Here's the moment I realize what has happened.
Fuck!
Yeah, I didn't factor this into my decision-making process. Back at the start of the game again, I grab Chikorita for some variety. This is probably a suboptimal choice for a number of reasons, but I wanted something to draw a little distinction between the runs. Also, I hate the Totodile and its successors, and I am not guaranteed a good answer to it in the second rival battle where it keeps killing my Pokemon. Naming my Chikorita Flareolin, we head out, and on our way to Falkner, grab a Mareep, use it in a little paralysis luck to kill his birds, and on our way to Bugsy, find a Geodude in Union Cave. I've still not used the Dark Cave encounter, and I have a solid counter to Bugsy's Scyther, so I'm feeling pretty good. Geodude does exactly what I ask of him, and after setting up some speed and defense boosts on the Caterpie, takes down the Scyther in one hit. Then we bring the team to the rival ambush and we work our way through a bunch of his Quilava's smokescreens to finally finish this part of the game with no losses. I'm improving! Moving on to Goldenrod, I held off doing the bug contest for reasons. Don't judge me. My team for Whitney isn't phenomenal, but my Mareep destroys her Clefairy and then paralyzes the Miltank with static, taking away its Lumberry. Then my Stantler comes in, intimidating down the Miltank's attack stat, and spends a long time putting it to sleep and reducing its accuracy. I swap around for a while, aimlessly allowing Miltank to seriously wound just about my whole team before I finally settle on Flareolin. The evolution of Chikorita is a decently bulky tank, and I give it some moves that let it soak up a lot of damage. Reflect make physical moves hurt less, and it stays up for the next Pokemon if I switch out. Substitute trades a quarter of her maximum HP for a Pokédoll that has a little more than 25% of her HP, and takes damage for her and makes her immune to status effects. That means that the Miltank can't make Flareolin flinch while her substitute is in play. Synthesis restores some hit points, and Razor Leaf is a damaging move with a high critical hit chance. I put all of these things together, and combined with the Miltank's reduced accuracy thanks to Stantler, Flareolin the Bayleaf ends this fight at full HP. 3 badges. Still no deaths. The bug contest yields a Venonat. Probably not something I want to bring to the Elite Four, but also not a run-ending debacle, so good with the bad. Shortly after, I miss out on a Vulpix thanks to Roar ending the fight. This is my first and possibly only chance to get a fire type this run, and now that's irrevocably gone.
Oh no!
In another unfortunate accident, I leave my Abra in the daycare for too long, so it misses out on learning any useful moves and will be useless for many levels. Then my Rattata dies from a crit from a wild Pokemon for my first loss of the run. Things are not going well. I do at least get my Golbat to evolve into a Crobat via Friendship Evolution, a fun mechanic where you have to walk around a lot before your Pokemon will evolve. Seriously, the most optimal way to do this is literally to just bike back and forth for like 15 minutes. It's one of the most mind-numbing mechanics in the game. Crobat is worth it though. It's incredibly fast and has moves that it ghosts for super effective damage. Ginger Chef bites her way through Morty's whole team without taking a single point of damage, giving me my 4th badge. I pick up several encounters, including Mr. Mime, Staryu, and the first shiny Pokemon I've ever seen, a Tentacool. Since shinies are rare and pretty cool, and are not strictly better than their non-shiny counterparts, my rule is that if I already have the same Pokemon as the shiny, I can swap the shiny in if I want. The original one fades away and is classified as obsolete. Anyway, I wound up with a bunch of Psychic Pokemon this run, so I geared a bunch of them up to counter Chuck's Pokemon, only to take him down with Golbat and the Ampharos instead, neither of which are Psychic at all. Chuck is a bit of a pushover. Up at the Lake of Rage, Mr. Mime accidentally crits the red Gyarados to death. Oh well, there's a pond just south that gives me a Magikarp anyway a few minutes later, so no big loss. I add a Lantern to my team, name it Heller, and in clearing out some of the random trainers, a Ninetales confuses, nasty plots, and critical hits its way into killing my Noctowl. Again, not a backbreaking loss, but frustrating all the same. Somehow, my chat convinces me to do the Ice Gym in ASMR mode. I misjudge my Haunter's damage on Price's Pillow-Swine, and Diaz pays the ultimate price. Losing my only ghost is potentially problematic for the future, but without evolving to Gengar, another trade-exclusive evolution, Haunter is a bit frail. Well, it was. You get the point. For Jasmine's gym, Namo the Geodude makes his first appearance in a long time. Coupled with Courage the Gyarados, the 7th gym's badge is a Steel. Sorry. Moving through the rocket plot, Patrel's wheezing explodes after Ginger barely fails to kill it. This happens to me a bunch, where I choose a weaker move thinking that it will kill in an effort to save PP on stronger moves, but ultimately doing less damage and not guaranteeing a kill keeps costing me team members, including my Crobat, which is also the only thing on my team that isn't incredibly slow. Ariana's Murkrow then proceeds to splatter my Kadabra all over the radio tower with a Pursuit, another thing that has gotten a lot of my Pokemon killed. At least I have a lot of other Psychics to replace it with, including an Espeon that I thought would be an Umbreon. Remember when I said I learned about the day-night cycle? Apparently I was wrong, as night technically begins whenever your game system says the time is 8 o'clock. I evolved mine at 7:45, and instead of getting a bulky dark type, I wound up with yet another psychic in this run that is full of them. The stand-in for a Team Rocket leader puts up no resistance at all, and I leave the rockets behind. On the way to the 8th gym, I pick up a bunch of encounters. Tangela, Swinub, Teddiursa, Spearow, and the Wobbuffet I've been waiting all game to get. One of these 5 Pokemon turns out to be incredibly important later on. Guess which one? While you're pondering that, I'll prepare for Claire, the Dragon Lady. My strategy here relies a lot on items. A Choice Scarf makes up for Ampharos' awful speed, making it faster than her Gyarados. An itemless Pokemon using Thief steals away her Kingdra's Citrus Berry. With some strategy and a little luck, we get through the 8th gym with no losses. In fact, no gym leaders have killed my Pokemon at all. Just some wild Pokemon and some rockets, which is kind of ironic considering how much I've been saying the rockets suck. Anyway, I snatch up my Dratini and my badge from the Dragon's Den, beat up some Evolutions, and wave briefly at Lugia as we merrily skip past the plot. I decide to take some time to train my team up for the rival battle in Victory Road, and in doing so, lose my Graveler to a Slowbro. Now, in my defense, I am an idiot. I literally removed a berry that would have reduced the damage a water-type move would deal to it a few minutes before, for reasons that I can most charitably characterize as short-sighted.
Why were you even fighting a water type with your Pokemon that takes quadruple damage from water moves?
I can hear you asking. Well, as punishment for your slightly condescending question and irritating voice, here's a quick explanation of some game mechanics. Pokemon have, in addition to the stats you can see, like HP and Speed, 2 sets of hidden stats. These are initial values, IVs, and effort values, EVs. You can kind of think of them as nature and nurture. Well, no. Nature is specifically a different thing in Pokemon, but don't get bogged down on the word and follow my point. IVs are set when you initially meet a Pokemon, and EVs can be influenced through enough effort. I won't get into the math, but basically what happens is that every time your Pokemon defeats another Pokemon in battle, it gains an EV point in one category. The category it gets is determined by the Pokemon it defeats. Pikachu always gives speed EVs, for example, while Charizard gives special attack. So if you just go out and mow down fields of Pikachu, you can be the fastest thing alive. Well, not exactly. There is a hard cap on how many EVs each Pokemon can gain in total, and a lower cap on how many any one individual statistic, like speed, can have. More or less, if you were to find a way to fight only one Pokemon that gave you the EVs you wanted, you could hit the cap for 2 of the categories of HP, attack, defense, special attack, and speed. So, what does this have to do with me getting my Graveler killed? Well, Slowpokes and their evolved form of Slowbros give HP EVs when you beat them. While that isn't incredibly rare on its own, in the lower level of Slowpoke well, only Slowpokes and Slowbros can appear while surfing. So rather than having to run from every fight that isn't against a Pokemon that gives the right EVs, I can just take every fight and not waste EV cap space on things Graveler doesn't need, like special attack, efficiently training up its HP by doing far more damage to the Slowpoke population than Team Rocket's stupid tail barbecue plan ever could have. Sorry. Slowpokes are also, well, slow. Even slower than my rock with no legs, and my Graveler was strong enough to one-shot them, meaning he wasn't in any real danger. But he couldn't one-shot a Slowbro, which show up about 10% of the time. A critical hit from a quadruple effective attack was all that was necessary to put Nemo's lights out for good. If I had the berry that reduces water damage, this probably wouldn't have happened, or if I swapped out Graveler on Slowbros, or if I had a way to improve my EVs without a massive, slow, boring grindfest. In any case, I'm out of tank with some decent resists. Despite that, the rival fight goes pretty well, with only my Togetic in any significant jeopardy. So I've reached Indigo Plateau once again, needing to select my team and train them up for the Elite Four. The team I'm planning to use includes Meganium, Ampharos, Mr. Mime... For fuck's sake! After I had just finished leveling Mr. Mime up, I accidentally left the experience share item on it, and it grew to level 43, 1 level higher than Will's Ace. Now, I could just bring Mr. Mime with me and not use it for the battle with Will, then use it on the later trainers who have higher level aces, but that strikes me as problematic for a few reasons. Practically, Mr. Mime's usefulness drops a fair bit in that scenario. As a Psychic, he's resistant to Will, and would be incredibly weak if I am right, and there is a Dark-type Elite Four member further on. Also, since I managed to lose to Will the first time I got this far, I'm not sure how excited I am to face him missing a whole Pokemon. Then, there's the implications that setting a precedent like that could lead to. If I can have an overleveled Pokemon in my party but not use it, why not just train something to level 50 and save it for the champion? That seems against the spirit of the rules to me, and bringing Mr. Mime is just not gonna happen. So I sigh heavily, dump Mr. Mime in the PC, and get out my Espeon. Espeon is a high-speed psychic, and I talked about it in my first run. The same things mostly apply, except I didn't have Shadow Ball. The other Pokemon making a return for my first attempt is Lantern. Healing from electricity could still come in handy. I've also got an Ampharos, which is slower than Lantern, but provides some different coverage and decent special attack. A Gyarados is on the team for powerful physical attacks and a useful Intimidate ability to reduce the attack of things that it switches in on. Meganium has made it all the way through the game and is here to be tanky and heal through the damage. And finally, the Pokemon from that group that I said, one of which would be critically important eventually, is Ursaring. Patience the Ursaring has the Guts ability, which makes him deal more damage when he is burned, paralyzed, or poisoned. It also removes the half damage of burn if that happens to be the status. Patience also has the move Facade, which deals more damage when Patience has a negative status. Using this synergy, Patience can absolutely murder opponents. Here's a quick look at this team's strengths and weaknesses. A little different than the first run through, but I think this team is a bit more ready for the fight. We lack resistance to Poison, Rock, Dragon, and Dark, but at least one thing on the team can hit every type for super effective damage, and in a healthy number of cases, 3 or 4 things on the team can. Alright, it's time to go back in. I'm armed with a bit more knowledge and I think a bit better team for the occasion. Let's step up to Will and see how we do. He leads Xatu, I lead Ursaring. Something I didn't mention yet is that Ursaring is holding the Choice Scarf item. Like the Choice Specs I described on Espeon last time, the item locks the user into the first move it clicks. In this case, instead of boosting special attack, it boosts speed. This means that Ursaring goes before Xatu, and with Facade, Guts, and the burn that I gave Patience before the fight, the Xatu drops without making a move, as does the Jinx that comes out next, and even the Executor and Slowbro that I hadn't seen in the first run. That only leaves the second, stronger Xatu, the one that got the boost effect of Ominous Wind and destroyed me the first time. The one that, that died without getting to make a move too. Okay, that's a good start. Patience suffered damage each round because of his burn, but took nothing from the opponents and smashed them all without much trouble. A much better start than last time. Moving on to the next room, I immediately recognize Koga, the ninja master of poison types. I send out my bear against his Ariados, which dies instantly. Then Koga pulls a bait and switch on me, bringing out a Forretress, which is a bug and steel type, neither of which is poison. After some mild recriminations and asking if Koga is now a bug-type trainer, I settle on bringing out Gyarados, which whittles down Forretress over a few turns. However, this gives Koga the opportunity to set up 2 layers of poison spikes, meaning that my Pokemon will get badly poisoned when they switch in. Fortunately, I don't need a switch for his Muck, as Gyarados takes that down in a couple of hits with Earthquake. Koga sends in his ace, a Crobat. Unlike the rest of his team, Crobat is blisteringly fast. It also uses Double Team, a move that makes it more evasive, and my Gyarados starts missing everything it does. Fortunately, Patience the Bear has a move that bypasses accuracy checks and can't be poisoned because it's already burned. Unfortunately, it doesn't do enough damage to matter, forcing me to rely on Espeon, who has a different move, Swift, that also bypasses accuracy checks. Combined with the poison damage from the Toxic Spikes, I can only get the Crobat to the red, but not dead, before I have to swap out yet again. Ampharos comes out as Koga uses a full restore. Luck is with me as I hit a Thunderbolt through 4 double teams and drop the Crobat from full HP. Venomoth is Koga's final Pokemon and it does its level best to take my team down. I spend some time trying to get Flareland set up again, but the Toxic Spikes makes that impossible. Gyarados does some work, but another full restore and a Toxic forces me to bring in my last Pokemon, Lantern. With every one of my Pokemon either badly poisoned or burned, Lantern finishes the job and we scrape by with nary a loss. The next battle comes as a shock to me. Despite knowing that I had crossed over into the Kanto region while heading to the Elite Four, for some reason I thought Johto had its own separate Elite Four. In fact, I even say,
You can't be fighting.
So it turns out to be fighting. Bruno, an Elite Four member from the original games, who is always the weak link, stands in my path. My Burning Bear strategy splatters Bruno's first 3, including his ace. Gyarados defeats Onix, and Lantern absorbs Hitmonchan's Thunder Punch, and is strong against everything else it tries to throw at it. I swap the bear back in as Bruno uses full restore, and return is enough to finish the job. And then I realize something that I probably should have figured out a long time ago.
God damn it, that means Lance is next!
Though I'm not entirely correct, as next comes Karen, who has chosen the dark path. Finally vindicated in my constant chirping that there would be a dark trainer in the Elite Four, I charge in with my Ursaring, who is only able to kill Umbreon before I have to swap it out. Locked into a normal type move, Karen's Gengar, who is not a dark type, is immune to the bear barrage for now. Karen tries to sneakily kill my Ampharos with Destiny Bond, but luckily I have a move that charges up my special defense, so I'm fine to set up and waste Gengar's Destiny Bond PP until it runs out, and then kill it with Thunderbolt. Murkrow meets the same fate, though a little bit faster. Karen introduces me to her manager, Ace, Houndoom. It boosts its special attack with Nasty Plot, but I get a lucky paralysis. Knowing that she will use a full restore, I charge Ampharos again to increase the next Thunderbolt damage, and make a crucial error. I forget that the only reason my Ampharos is faster is the paralysis, which Karen just cured with her full restore, so Houndoom goes first and kills Ampharos. Ursaring comes in and cleans up the Houndoom and the Vileplume. Another thing that is not a Dark type. Tangent. For a new type, Dark has had insufficient representation. Karen is basically Koga Light, considering she has 2 poison Pokemon that are not Dark types, and I'm not sure that they even had a Dark type move. This is a consistent frustration of mine with gym leaders and Elite Four members. I suppose it can be more challenging if you can't guess what the contents of her team are, but why have a themed team at all if that's the case? The champion doesn't have a theme, why should all of you? Also, the champion totally has a theme this time, it's dragons. Lance has been the recurring, oh wow, he's so cool character for most of the game, and it would be silly for the game to use anyone else in that role. Except for maybe your childhood friend who definitely has a crush on you and who you never get to battle. But that story never bothers to resolve itself, so we've got Lance, which is fine. Lance is cool. Dragons are cool. So, I'm down a Pokemon, but the good news is I'm not missing much coverage since the hole left by Ampharos is largely covered by Lantern. Bring on the champion, with his unique theme. Of course, Lance leads with a non-dragon in his own Gyarados. It's not the most egregious instance of this, as he's had this before and Gyarados is more or less an honorary dragon, but it does intimidate my Ursaring and make any attempt at sweeping much harder with reduced attack. I swap over to Lantern, who's able to tank a hit and one-hit KO the Gyarados with Thunderbolt. Lance decides that he isn't fucking around and brings out his ace, a level 50 Dragonite. With this being the last hurdle in the Elite Four gauntlet, I'm able to make sacrifices for the greater good, and Espeon is my weakest remaining link. I swap it in, and Dragonite uses Outrage. The bad news is, my Espeon is very, very dead. The good news is, Dragonite is locked in on Outrage for at least another turn. I bring out Gyarados to reduce Dragonite's attack, and instruct it to use Ice Fang as hard as it can. Gyarados not only shocks me by being faster than the champion's ace despite being 4 levels lower, Ice Fang also makes Dragonite flinch. With the massive damage Ice deals to a Dragon Flying type, Gyarados takes it down in 2 hits. I have a lead on the champ, but Lance unleashes a different sort of problem. This. Aerodactyl is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game, and it hits like a truck. Nothing I have can outspeed this thing, even my scarf-wearing bear. My first hope is to tank it with Meganium, but Lance reads my switch and uses Aerial Ace, slashing my starter to under half health immediately. With Aerodactyl always going first, I am left with no choice but another sacrifice. The Pokemon named after my wife meets its demise without getting a chance to fight back. But this does give me a chance to get my full health Ursaring in. It should survive 1 hit, and then has a chance to deal massive damage on the backswing. It does survive, but now my Pokemon is the one to flinch. Unable to soak another hit, I bring in Gyarados to intimidate the prehistoric Pokemon before dying. Ursaring can now survive 1 more hit, so I give it another chance. Whereupon it promptly fails me again, flinching a second time and subsequently dying. This leaves Lantern as my final remaining Pokemon. It manages to survive a Rock Slide and not flinch, bringing Aerodactyl to low health with a Surf. Lance full restores, and Lantern lands another Surf, this time dealing slightly more damage, but still not enough. Aerodactyl survives and lands the killing blow on my last Pokemon. Fuck! I really thought that the Ursaring was going to carry me the whole way, but the Bear on Fire run is now down in flames. Back to the start. Start game. Name self Rhench. Choose boy. Get Cyndaquil. Run to Mr. Pokemon. Get egg. Professor Elm calls. Fight rival. Deliver egg. Lyra teaches us catch Pokemon. Get Sentret. Then Rattata. Then Hoothoot. Then Ghastly. Then Ekans. Ugh. Not only is the Ekans in a place where I could get a Mareep, but Ekans is terrible! At least it has Intimidate. I use it to beat up the subordinates in Faulkner's gym, and only an hour and a half in, I'm ready to get the first badge. Nothing on my team has a super effective move against flyers, and none of their stats are particularly good, so Faulkner's Pidgeotto kills my Rattata. It didn't have guts nor any other real redeeming qualities, so while I'm not happy to be losing things this early, losing Rattata in specific doesn't really bother me. Back to progress, I acquire a Zubat in Union Cave. I actually use my Dark Cave encounter and get a Geodude so that I have something to tank Bugsy's Scyther. I quickly foil Team Rocket's tail-grilling plans and catch a Slowpoke of my own. In the gym, Geodude kills Scyther in one hit, and the other Pokemon Bugsy has pose no threat. So, with a Hive badge under my belt, I go to greet my rival. Despite the Ekans being pretty terrible, it has a good ability and a solid move pool with Glare and Bite, so it takes out the Ghastly and the Croconaw on its own. Sage the Geodude throws some rocks at the Zubat, and we get through the rival battle with ease. I pick up Weedle in the Ilex Forest, teach Slowpoke Headbutt so that I can backtrack to an encounter that I skipped. The one that I want is the tree-based encounter just outside of Union Cave on Route 33. The reason I want this encounter is that it's one of a few areas with trees that has exactly 3 Pokemon that can fall out. I'm aiming for a specific bug, but instead I get a Spearow. The next zone west, Azalea Town, also has trees with the same possible Pokemon, and this time I get what I was looking for. Heracross. Heracross has a chance to have Guts, and the one that I caught, named Bite Knight, does. If you'll recall the last Elite Four attempt, Guts was the reason our Burning Bear did so much damage. Heracross will have access to a different move pool, but we may be able to recapture some of the power of the Guts strategy in this run from a much earlier point. Bite Knight has a Brave nature, which means plus attack, minus speed. That isn't an ideal combination, but it's hardly the worst that it could be. I add a Drowsy to the team as well, grab a bike, pick up some packages from Mom, and capture a Nidoran male and a Nidoran female back to back. I'm pretty happy about the female and a little underwhelmed on the male, as it has less than stellar IVs and a special attack boosting nature. Something that will not be useful unless I spend a lot of TMs on it. I hold off the bug catching contest for reasons that I could probably describe as fearful of repeating the past, and bring the team to the normal gym. We work our way up to Whitney, take down the Clefairy quickly, and bring out the Miltank. After a critical hit killing my Nidorina, I learned that critical hits ignore stat drops, which is useful but costly information. My Ekans clears the Lumberry, and my Drowsy spends all of its turns immobilized by love or flinching. Hoot Hoot manages to put the Miltank to sleep, allowing Heracross to come in and use fighting moves to break down the Miltank while it naps. Another loss, and one that I had been hoping to use for several gyms in the future. Nidoqueen was a house in the first run, and losing her so fast is a disappointment. Picking myself up, I grab a Metapod from the bug catching contest and make my way towards Morty's gym. Picking up a Frisk Stantler as well. The rival fight in the burned out building goes without incident, and a Coughing joins the team. Between my Arbok, my Noctowl, and Morty telling his Pokemon to use Curse when they're at less than 50% health, I get a Fog badge with not much effort. I scoop up the Surf and Strength HMs and start heading west. A Magnemite gets the name Cage as it joins the team, I kill a Meowth encounter with a critical hit, and I climb the lighthouse. With my water-based encounters, I add a Tentacool and a Shelder to my Pokemon collection. My team beats up Mystery Man Yusin, we deliver the medicine, and the Safari Zone opens up for me. From here, I have access to quite a few new encounter zones. The first thing I get is a Tauros, which I am very excited about. In the original games, Tauros was an extreme powerhouse, but I've never caught one before. The Safari Zone itself yields a Wobbuffet, making me happy that I chose to use my Dark Cave encounter early. However, the Safari Zone's weird capture methodology lets Wobbuffet run away from me, so I walk away with nothing from that encounter. Not that Wobbuffet was really going to be the difference maker in a run, but getting something is always better than getting nothing. In the basement level of the Cliff Cave, I accidentally do something incredibly smart. I put my Magnemite in front of the party, which means its Magnet Pull ability has a 50% chance to attract a Steel Pokemon, if one exists in that location. This means that a wild Steelix that exists in that location pops out at me. I'm super pumped to see Steelix, as it's a cool evolution for a Pokemon that I have always thought had a lot of wasted potential in Onix. I put it to sleep and chip away at it with everything I can, including hurting itself in confusion. Several sleeps, most of my team's health, my entire supply of Pokeballs, and my Slowpoke's death later, I failed to capture the Steelix. I'll be honest, this one hurt a lot. Losing the Slowpoke is certainly bad, but not getting the Steelix afterward was absolutely devastating. I grab a Mareep from the grass just outside Mount Mortar to help morale a little. I get Heracross poisoned on a wild Pokemon to activate Guts so that it can fight Chuck. Chuck's Primeape opens up with Double Team, which is unfortunate for him, as I choose to use Aerial Ace, a move that always hits regardless of evasion. With the Primeape dead, Chuck's Poliwrath comes out next. It has a powerful fighting move, and at one point I say,
Yeah, Focus Punch just straight out kills Tauros if I bring it.
That statement reaches its full gravitas a few moments later, after Poliwrath has bludgeoned several of my team members to low health, and I confidently swap Tauros in, expecting a hypnosis at the worst. Instead, I lose Tauros.
The only good thing that had happened today, I just undid.
Heracross finished off Chuck, but, well...
No, I'm certainly not happy about losing my Tauros, and earlier missing out on a Steelix, and earlier missing out on a Wobbuffet, and earlier losing my Slowpoke. Yeah, no, I'm not particularly excited about those things.
I stopped streaming for the day here. Things are out of control. When I come back, I decide I'm sick of the game's stupid non-linearity, and I do the Steel Gym now. My level cap is actually a level lower than Jasmine's Ace, since I still have the Ice Gym's cap in my way, but none of this is any concern for Quilava. With a Charty Berry to reduce the one rock move Steelix has a chance to use, Quilava solos the entire gym, which is just Jasmine herself. So much for the strength of steel. I headbutt a few trees to pick up a Venonat and an Execute on the way to the Red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage, take down the Red Gyarados in one hit, talk to Lance from a safe distance, and fly off to Violet City. Then, Lance commits attempted murder again, and I smash my way around the rocket base for a while. I don't fuck up and kill my encounter this time, coming away with an Electrode. I quickly clear my way through Price's underlings and then smash Price himself. He never even gets a turn to move. I head to Goldenrod to pose as Team Rocket again, and learn that the male main character is such a douchebag he even wears his rocket hat backwards. And then I climb the tower. Petrel's gassy army falls before my Haunter, which won't be damaged even if one explodes. My Magneton clears the rival fight on its own, and I continue through the rockets. Proton is first up, and not worth more mention. Ariana similarly goes down without incident. The Rocket storyline comes to a close with my Tentacruel surfing all over the final executive's Pokemon. I still don't remember his name. I can't be bothered to look it up. Now it's encounter time, and actually quite a few. I head through some caves to get to the grass in the Ruins of Elf and pick up a Natu, another Psychic type that doesn't learn the move Psychic until after the Elite Four starts. In the Ice Cave, I get a Delibird. Sad. We pick up Teddy Ursa as well, but this one has Quick Feet instead of Guts. It has good stats, but Quick Feet is just not it. I finally land a Magikarp in Blackthorn City, and Gary is a welcome addition to the team. Gary is fast, but his attack statistic is underwhelming, even for a Magikarp. Next to join my adventure are Krabby, Seal, and a worthless Ladybug that goes straight into the PC, never to see the light of day again. The next task ahead of me is fighting Claire, the Dragon Gym leader. Her Kingdra is one of the scariest things I've seen in the game so far. If I don't have a solid plan for how to deal with it, it is completely possible for it to sweep my whole team. And another thing I have to account for is experience. With Claire's level cap at 41, and the first member of the Elite Four at 42, it is risky to bring any of the Pokemon I plan on using in the Elite Four to any of the major fights at this point. If something doesn't go exactly how I want it to, I could end up with a lot of XP on Pokemon that can't afford it, or worse, lose one of my endgame Pokemon entirely. So, my plan is to bring 6 Pokemon that are not part of my Elite Four team to take on Claire. This has its own downsides, but risking a sniper crit, which does 4 times damage instead of 2 on anything that I need for the future, is not something I'm willing to risk. Nothing I have has the ability to kill the Kingdra in one hit, so if I'm gonna risk a death, it's gonna be on the B team. Plan A for the B team is for Crobat to boost the Kingdra's attack with Swagger and let it hit itself. I know that sounds a little risky, but Claire's Kingdra doesn't have any moves that even use its attack stat, so it's safer than it sounds. I've got some backup plans, as well as a last-ditch insurance policy named Old Man Paul, but I hope not to use it. The battle starts, and Claire's first 3 Pokemon go down with the only issue being a paralyzed Dugong. The Kingdra interferes with my plans by reducing Crobat's accuracy. Swagger misses because of this, and things start to spiral. I manage to pluck its berry away, but Kingdra beats up on Tentacruel, Hypno, and Dugong before I'm forced to bring in Old Man Paul. Fortunately, the Kingdra is low enough that I don't have to sacrifice him with Explosion, which is the insurance policy. Claire defeated, we pick up our Dratini friend and safely secure it in the PC. We take down the Kimono Girl Evolution Gauntlet without any losses and successfully summon and then run away from Lugia. So much for the story. I can now start making my way towards Victory Road. East of the starting town, I fish up a Chinchu. The final pre-Elite Four battle with my rival takes place. I do a lot of prep work and manage to defeat the rival without over-leveling, dying, or exploding. With the next item on my agenda, returning to the Elite Four, I do a bit of grinding for EVs. Remember those? They can help my Pokemon stats get a little bit better. I'm doing this just outside the Dragon Gym because all that spawns there are Magikarp. Since Magikarp give speed EVs and are practically harmless, it's a great way to boost the speed of a lot of my Pokemon. And while I'm doing that, a shiny Magikarp shows up. Per my earlier rule, I can swap out my existing Magikarp, or Evolution if I want to, and since this new one's nature and stats are better, welcome to the team, Shiny Gary. I finish up my grinding and arrive at my new team. Heracross is taking on the role of Gut Sweeper. Magneton is throwing Thunderbolts and immune to poison. Hypno is a specially defensive wall. Crobat will be dealing with 2 of Karen's non-dark types. Gyarados will be dealing with the rest of Karen's Pokemon and have general offensive prowess. And a Pokemon that I said I was disappointed to find earlier in the run will be here as a Silver Bullet for Lance. I'll get to that later. And now, on to the third try at the Pokemon League's Elite Four. Will's Psychic team has exactly one thing that I'm concerned about, his Slowbro. It's too bulky for my Heracross to take down on its own, so the earlier in the fight that Slowbro comes out, the more likely things are to go off the rails for me. Heracross downs 2 Zatus in rapid succession and takes out Jinx as well, but then the Slowbro comes out, forcing me to swap into Magneton. Magneton is able to tank the damage and kill it with a Thunderbolt. Then, Magneton outlasts Executor, and I get past Will for a good start. Moving on to Koga, my plan is for Magneton to solo the whole battle. I have contingencies in place, but under ideal circumstances, Cage can do this alone. Ariados goes down without much issue, and the Fortress, which is only a major threat if it explodes, doesn't explode. With Cage behind a substitute, Venomoth can't confuse it, and so Venomoth dies. Koga's ace, a Crobat, comes out and ups its evasiveness with Double Team. Fortunately, I came prepared and taught Magneton Lock On, which makes sure that the next attack it fires will connect. A Thunderbolt later, and Muck comes out. Muck tries a similar tactic to Crobat using Minimize to up its evasiveness, but this is an inevitability, as Muck's 2 methods of damaging are poison-based and Magneton is completely immune to poison. Even Screech won't work thanks to the substitute, rendering Muck completely useless. After a little while, Muck falls, and Magneton has done exactly what I asked of it. That might be the first time something's gone completely according to plan. Cage huffs a little ether to give it some more Thunderbolt uses, and we head on to Bruno. I press fighting moves 5 times on Heracross, and Bruno's Pokemon all die in one hit. Through 3 trainers now, I've only used 2 Pokemon. So far, so good. Last time I fought Karen, she took my Ampharos from me, and she's generally much bigger of a threat than anyone but Lance. Depending on what order she sends her Pokemon out in, things can get complicated. Fortunately, she sends out all 3 of her Dark types one after another, which Heracross eliminates in 1 hit each. Then, my Crobat outspeeds her Gengar, so I don't have to worry about its Destiny Bond catching me by surprise, and it also deals with the Vileplume. Already better than last time, I'm walking up to Lance with all 6 of my Pokemon intact. I've seen 3 of Lance's Pokemon, and based on what I know from the original game, I assume he's going to have 2 Dragonairs, and because it's the fancy new dragon in this game, and his protege in the Dragon Gym has one, I'm guessing he has a Kingdra. If he does, I probably have to sacrifice something to be sure that I can beat it, but I think that I can win this. I prepare my Silver Bullet by making it as high level as I can manage with all the rare candies I've found in this run, and I boost everyone else as much as I'm able. I enter the Champion's Parlor. I send out Nidoking. Lance sends out Gyarados, and the battle has begun. A Thunderbolt crit, which incidentally is 8 times its normal damage and a bit excessive, but certainly not complaining, from Minasanuki ends the Gyarados, and I get my first surprise as Lance sends out a level 49 Dragonite. Since I've already seen his ace, a level 50 Dragonite, I have to get through both of them. Mina is up to the task, throwing out an Ice Beam and ending it before it can move. His ace comes out next, and it meets the same fate. Then, Lance just continues with this strategy, throwing a third Dragonite at me. I guess between games he evolved his 2 Dragonairs into these. I can't really be mad about it, as 3 Pokemon in a row dropped to Ice Beam, putting me up 6-2. Lance finally switches things up, stops throwing Dragonites at me, and throws out a Charizard instead. This is something that Nidoking cannot heal in one kit, and Nidoking is the only thing I'm certain can 1v1 the Aerodactyl, so I play it safe and switch out. What I do from there is the precise opposite of safe, however. Remember the Claire fight, where my plan for the Kingdra was to use Swagger, and that was okay because Kingdra didn't have any moves that were based on its attack stat. After seeing the Charizard use an Aerial Ace, I assume Charizard is a special attacker and go for the same strategy, using the move not once, not twice, but 3 times, raising the Charizard's attack by 6 stages, to its maximum possible value. I figured out it was a mixed attacker after I used the first one, but I kept going anyway, and with a lot of good luck on the Charizard hitting itself, Substitute, and Roost, my Crobat ends up living to tell the tale of it making an opponent an incredibly deadly sweeper when it had no business being that strong. A little bit of luck keeps me at a perfect record, down to the last Pokemon of the Elite Four. Aerodactyl. This thing swept through my entire team last time. It has Rock Slide, and Crobat has no substitute up right now. There's no way I'm using Swagger on this thing. Nothing I have is faster than it, so I can't swap directly to what I want to use to kill it, as a critical hit plus a regular attack can kill any of my Pokemon. So, I make the right but sad decision, and bring in Hypno just to take the fall. Excel Saga is taken below half hit points by the first hit, and a critical hit finishes the job. Never even getting to use a move in the gauntlet, Excel dies a hero's death nonetheless. Thank you, Hypno. With Mina able to safely switch in, I have a much better chance of winning the fight. Last time, Rock Slide Flinch was the main thing that ended my run, and it remains the primary obstacle here. Lance orders an Aerial Assault instead, and an Ice Beam brings his Aerodactyl to the red. He fully restores it, but another Ice Beam returns us to the same position. Another full restore. Another Ice Beam. This one has a tiny bit more power behind it, and it kills the Aerodactyl from full, making me the champion. With a single lost Pokemon, I have defeated the Elite Four. And my Gyarados didn't even participate. I celebrate for a little bit, and then my mom gives me a call despite being in the same house as me to talk about finance and not my momentous and historic victory at the Elite Four. Whatever, Mom can be like that. I get a boat ticket and head to Kanto, beating up some Pokemon on the way. Kanto's gym levels are all out of whack compared to the first game, with the Fuchsia Gym being the lowest level. In this gym, the gimmick is that there are several body doubles of the same person all standing around, but I expertly conclude that it's the person that is standing where Koga used to stand. It turns out it's his daughter leading the gym, Janine. Janine brings my Magneton to 3 hit points and murders my Arbok, but 1 Kanto gym down. The good news is that I pick up another poison type immediately to replace Arbok. The bad news is it's Oddish. Yeah, I guess it makes sense that Kanto has a lot of the old Pokemon from the game where it was the main location, but it sure doesn't matter to me since most of my Pokemon are from the original 101 anyway. I'm not gonna stop complaining about that. Next on the agenda is Lieutenant Surge, and I'm really excited to start using my Dragonair, which I may have mentioned is my favorite Pokemon. Weirdly, I've never actually gotten a Dragonair to evolve into Dragonite in all of my time playing Pokemon, but this one is well on its way, and after it helps me defeat Lieutenant Surge, it should be able to both learn Dragon Dance and then evolve so that it can become the frightening sweeper to take down Elite Four Redux. Dragonair has a move called Safeguard that will help prevent my Pokemon from being paralyzed, so I figure leading with it is a solid plan. I accidentally bump into a person in the gym while doing this stupid trash puzzle, and I insult him a bit by saying that he's the trash that I'm trying to sort through. Then I show both good game knowledge and terrible decision making by saying, Oh god, if this thing explodes, I'm gonna be pissed. Of course, Voltorb immediately explodes, killing my Dragonair on the spot. I really just can't have nice things, can I? I didn't need to fight that trainer, and I didn't need to have Dragonair in the party, let alone in the lead. My Graveler probably tanks the crit explosion just fine. And then I proceed to lose Graveler in the fight against Lieutenant Surge. I'm losing strong Pokemon in really stupid ways now, and it's starting to take a toll on my Elite Four team, not to mention my sanity. I managed to defeat Lieutenant Surge despite my losses, and then have to engage in what little story there is in the post-game by fixing the power plant. A weird, sort of ethnic stereotype Team Rocket member apparently didn't hear that the domestic ones are all worthless losers, and he tried to do something reasonable and steal a part from the power plant for unspecified villainous reasons, I'm sure. I beat him up and he goes away, still showing more initiative than almost all of the Rockets that have been in the game so far. Then I have to get Misty to stop hanging out at Makeout Point with her boyfriend for long enough to do her goddamn job as a gym leader. The fight with her actually goes well compared to what's been happening lately. Executor does get to the single digits of health, but we pull through and nothing on our side dies. In new Pokemon news, we get an Electabuzz, a Bellsprout, a Jigglypuff, a Machop, and an Abra. Also, I finally hatched the egg that I was given many hours ago into a Togepi. After a while of running around, looking for the equivalent of a Pokeflute, I finally figure out how to wake up the Snorlax that has been preventing me from progressing. After it kills my Noctowl with a single critical hit, and reveals that it is holding Leftovers, one of the best held items in the game, I decide to hit it with my Master Ball, ensuring that I get the coveted item, and the Snorlax that goes along with it. Snorlax ends up having really solid stats. I probably should use this at some point in the future. Probably. This also gives me access to Diglett Cave, where I acquire a Diglett. At least one place in these games has the type of Pokemon it promises. I pick up a Pidgey and use the Hoenn sound to induce a Spoink to join the team as well. I finally challenge Brock, who may have taken acid during our battle. Ahaha, it itches? What? That unusual outburst aside, I get through Brock without incident. I run around using the Hoenn sound and pick up a Makuhita and an Absol, the latter of which I am stoked about. Absol is my first Dark type of the run, since I mucked up my chance to get an Umbreon. Having a Dark type right before the Psychic Gym seems incredibly useful. I lead with Absol, and it takes Sabrina's entire team down without taking a single point of damage. I pull out Crobat for Erica's gym, and I'll let Past Me explain how I handled her.
So basically, we pressed substitute once, and then area lays 10 times, and we beat Erica.
Then we head to Blaine's gym, which is on Seafoam Island instead of Cinnabar because Cinnabar blew up because of his experiments or something. Anyway, my Seaking drops his first Pokemon and my Dugtrio cancels out his Thunder Punch and outspeeds the rest, netting me yet another easy badge. Also, why does Blaine only have 3 Pokemon? Even Erica had 4. What is with this game's weird-ass difficulty curve? At least the next gym leader has 6 Pokemon, making this a reasonable progression. This gym used to be Giovanni's gym, but since he's not appearing in this game, despite the story calling for it immensely, Blue, the rival from the original game, has taken it over. His lead, Executor, immediately kills my Absol, so I'm out of Dark Pokemon again. My Seaking hits 2 clutch flinches on the Machamp, Mega Horns the Executor, and critical hits the Rhydon for a one-hit KO. Honestly, this is the best work I've ever gotten out of a Seaking. Blue's Arcanine roars Seaking out and brings in Lantern, which can sweep the rest of Blue's team. Losing Absol still really sucks, but there was a real chance that the Machamp could have swept my whole team if not for Seaking being awesome here, so I'll take the result. This opens up a few new locations for me, like some places that I can only access with Rock Climb and places that require me to have all the badges, so I run around for a while grabbing items and new Pokemon. We add a Bronzor and a Ponyta to our box, and then we go for a Mount Silver encounter. of all the things that could possibly disappoint me, this is the biggest fucking disappointment I could have been given. An Onyx. We pick up a Wooper and a Hoppip, but neither have particularly good stats. Vulpix also goes in the box, and we defossilize a Kabuto. A very useless male Combee shows up, as do a Slugma, a Grimer, a Wurmple, and a Doduo. None of this is really worth writing home about, but I figure I might as well show you what my options were, so you can criticize what I don't end up bringing to the Elite Four. I know I did. So, let's listen to my logic from the past about why I'm bringing what I plan to the Elite Four, because looking back, even I have a few questions. As you can see, the team consists of Heracross, Magneton, Nidoking, Hariyama, Gyarados, and Executor. The plan, such as it is to do a lot of similar things to what I did in my first run. It's to use Heracross to beat most of Will and swap to Magneton when necessary. It's Magneton for Koga, Heracross for Bruno, a combination of Heracross and Friends for Karen. Heracross can beat everything but the Gengar, if there still is a Gengar. I don't know if there's changes. And then I have to sacrifice some things to get past Lance, but I think I can get past Lance. I'm sure there's other choices I could have made going in here. Honestly, the Hariyama looks a little suspect to me looking back, and where is that Snorlax I said had really good stats? It didn't die to the best of my recollection, so why didn't I use it here? Anyway, let's see what happens. On challenging Will, I immediately learn a few things about the Elite Four Redux. They have 6 Pokemon this time, which also means they'll have at least one new Pokemon entirely. I quickly also learn that this is not just a glow-up for the 5 that I fought last time with an additional member. These are largely rebuilt teams, so I'm going to have to learn as I go. Will first sends out a Bronzong, which I decide my Heracross can't handle, and my Executor gets badly injured. Fortunately, Substitute Magneton is able to safely kill it and tank the one hit from the Gardevoir that follows. Jinx remains from Will's original team, and I correctly read a potion timing to replace the substitute before taking out the Jinx. Grumpig and Slowbro also fail to take out the substitute, so Xatu is unable to deal any damage to Magneton at all, and I get past Will with no losses. My planning is kind of in shambles here, but I'm doing my best to adapt on the fly. My plan for Koga was to use Magneton consistently again, but the first thing he does is has his Skuntank use Dig. I swap in Shiny Gary Gyarados to dodge the damage, and Dragon Dance. Skuntank misses Toxic, so I get another Dragon Dance off. With a +2 speed, +2 attack Gyarados, I think I can sweep. Skuntank dies in one hit, and then I fail to account for Toxicroak's Dry Skin using a water move on it. Thankfully, I get lucky and don't get punished. Toxicroak, Swalot, and Muck die to Earthquake, and Crobat and Venomoth die to Waterfall. Once again, my planning is completely foiled, but I pull off the match safely, this time thanks to Dragon Dance. I just wish I still had a Dragonair that had that move. Bruno starts off well, with Heracross killing Hitmontop and Hitmonlee in one hit each, but I miscalculate the speed of his Lucario, which instantly kills Heracross thanks to the defense drop from close combat. Not good. Gyarados is fast enough to Earthquake the Lucario, and Executor is able to withstand Machamp and take it and the Hariyama and Hitmonchan down with Psychic. That ends Bruno, but losing Heracross is a mighty blow to my team, since it was a huge part of my plan for Karen. At least I have Hariyama as a backup fighting type, per past Mii's plan. It starts out well, taking down Weavile, but it's too damn slow, even with a Choice Scarf, to finish off the Honchkrow, and Hariyama dies as well. I spend a turn where Karen is using a potion to have Gary Dragon Dance again, and then risk a second one, but eat a Thunder Wave for my trouble. It turns out in hindsight I could have killed this thing at +1, but my calculations accidentally included the burn that was on Heracross, not Gyarados. Gary still takes Honchkrow down, and also kills Spiritomb without letting it act. Umbreon then uses Curse and Payback to get Gary down to 15 HP. Not willing to risk a full paralysis, I swap in Magneton and get a substitute up. Umbreon falls, and Houndoom comes in and instantly destroys my substitute. Fortunately for me, Houndoom gets paralyzed by Magneton's Thunderbolt, making Cage faster and able to kill Houndoom on the next turn. Karen's last Pokemon is Absol, another Pokemon I really wish I still had, which falls to another critical Thunderbolt from Magneton. Cage is showing the hell up for this fight. The last member of the Elite Four is Lance, the Dragon Master, and as I approach his room, I feel like there's something different about it. Well, I have the Pokemon I think I need to take him down, and I've beaten him before, so let's do this. Wait, that's not the right theme. Where have I heard this before? Doesn't matter. Time for battle. I was hoping he would lead with his Gyarados, but no such luck. His Salamence is a huge problem for Magneton, but I have to preserve HP on Gyarados and Nidoking, and Executor would also die to the Flamethrower that I assume it has. With no better choice, I order Magneton to attack, knowing that the attack will never come. Miraculously, Cage lives on 2 hit points through the flames. Its steel nearly melted off. Cage fires a Thunderbolt that brings Salamence to nearly half. I thank Magneton for its dutiful service, but have no other choice. Magneton meets its fate at the hands of Salamence. But Cage's sacrifice is not for nothing. The Salamence spends a turn, resting to cure the damage Cage did with its Thunderbolt, covering Gary's missed Ice Fang. Fortunately, the second Ice Fang hits and avenges the death of Magneton. Lance sends his own Gyarados in, and I swap out to clear the Intimidate off of Gary. Executor dies uselessly to the Gyarados, putting me down to 2 Pokemon. I'm not even sure if Executor saw it coming. My last 2 Pokemon both have choice items, locking them into the first moves they use when they swap in. Gyarados needed a Choice Scarf to outspeed the Aerodactyl that I'm no longer sure Lance even has anymore, and Nidoking needed a Choice Lens to kill Dragonite. Nidoking is able to clear the Gyarados with Thunderbolt, but the next Pokemon out... That's where this music came from! You've been training with Cynthia, you bastard! Garchomp is the signature Pokemon of an Elite Four champion from a different game by the name of Cynthia. She's a much better gym leader than Lance, and Lance is not supposed to have one! Fuck! Garchomp is immune to the only move that Nidoking can currently do, so I have to swap to Gyarados, luckily dodging an Earthquake. Gyarados isn't able to take down Garchomp, and it falls before the mighty dragon's outrage. This did let me reset the move that Nidoking can do, so I have it fire off an Ice Beam, eliminating the Garchomp. If Lance does have an Aerodactyl, I know that I'm dead now. I'm only slightly less unhappy to see Charizard come out, which is also not a dragon, but it's at least forgivable. Its fire typing covers its ice weakness, but Nidoking manages to freeze it on the first turn. I can't kill in 2 hits, so Lance full restores it before I can kill. Charizard finally gets an attack off, and Nidoking's health bar slowly drains away. Holding! To 3 hit points! Lance full restores again, but another freeze stops his Charizard from attacking. Down to his last Pokemon, Lance throws out Altaria. I have no idea what Altaria's speed is, but if I'm faster, Ice Beam is 4 times effective against it. I really hope I'm faster. I'm faster! Come on! Come on! Yeah! Altaria goes down, and I am the champion once more. It took Magneton hitting a clutch paralysis, 2 freezes on the Charizard, and generally great luck across the entire run, but I got there. I won. There's 1 fight left in the game, but it's nothing compared to the Elite Four challenge. My Kabutops gets one-shotted, my Togetic dies while taking an extended nap, but Lantern kills Pikachu, Kadabra kills Venusaur, and I explode my Weezing to kill Snorlax. My Lantern hits a range to kill Lapras, easily kills Blastoise, and blows up another Charizard with much less hand-wringing than the one with Lance. Nidoking got to just watch the last fight from the bench, but it was on the team for all of my critical battles, and was easily the MVP of the entire game. You've seen the death scenes of the others, but here's the full work showcasing Nidoking's dramatic victory. Seriously, if Mina doesn't hit those 2 freezes, I'm back at square one, starting this game all over again. I love the pieces of the Pokemon Nidoking has defeated laying about the arena, the hidden boss Garchomp behind my Gyarados, and just everything about this picture. It shows off the most valiant moments in my Pokemon's life, whether it be the sacrifices of the 5 around or Nidoking's glorious but heavily damaged victory. Thank you, Sage, for making the picture so much better than I had hoped. And that's the end of the story. I succeeded after 4 runs, and though it relied on a lot of luck, generally, I'm proud of how I played things. Thank you for coming along with me reliving this silly, ridiculous challenge, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.